going forward, why would anybody support Justice Democrats or any groups that supposedly are fighting on our behalf? They don't do shit. And I do think, and this is something that I think was really defining in many ways. You know, Jen and I have very strong opinions about Jimmy, but Jimmy was 1,000% correct about force the vote. And we got behind him and that initiative at the time. And then we saw, you know, how Sam Cedar responded to it and Cenk and all of them. And to me, it just became clear as day. It's like, you are either going to do the right thing or you're going to kowtow because it's a career. And if you're going to kowtow because of it's a career, then we simply can't break bread with you. And you have to make a clean break at that point. You have to decide, okay, Jimmy's an asshole, but I agree with him on this and I'll fight with him on this, because that's what mature people do. That's what people who don't look at this as, oh, did you hear what that person has said about that person? That, who gives a fuck? It doesn't mean anything. Do you care about whether we have a living wage or universal health care? I sure as fuck do. And I certainly hope a lot of other people do. And you're going to have to get along with people that you may not necessarily get along with, potentially on a personal level, but on a political, economic level, we have to put differences aside. We don't have a choice. This shit has gotten so progressively worse, and I use that term loosely, over the past few years. And it's only going to get so much worse if we do not figure out a way to band together. And that's why what you've been doing, I'd like to think us on a much smaller level have been doing, but we're really trying to coalesce as best we can. Because I do think that enough people want to wake up. They just don't know who to trust. And I feel like Kshama is like that rare bird that really has, she's never let us down. She really has stuck to her guns. And that is extremely admirable. And I think that that's somebody who, if we can put our faith in and say, is there somebody that we could actually give our money to collectively that is going to do right by us? I think she's the one person that you could point to right now and say, yeah, I think she definitely is the person that we could trust.
Yeah, and she's also not running for a political, office. She won the fight for 15 against Amazon in Seattle. I mean, that didn't happen. Nancy Pelosi didn't do that. Chuck Schumer didn't do that. These are things that a lot of the people that are making waves on the ground are just completely ignored by mainstream media. And I said this a while back. I didn't understand, why isn't Kshama Sawant on TYT? And I know that she should be, and they can talk to her about how they were been able, or her organization, to make those wins in Seattle. It was almost as if they don't want people to hear about it. They don't want them to know what they've been able to do on a local level, because then
is
people
that
might.
True? Cenk doesn't cover. Cenk doesn't cover that at all. Why didn't
we have
asked him?
We had
She was invited. This is what I know. She was invited to appear on the show a couple of years ago to talk about just what I told you, like this whole fight for 15 and all that, the wins that they had. And then somewhere along the line, when they realized who she was, it was rescinded.
Yeah.
See, I did not know this. If I knew that, I would have asked him about that. I would have taken an issue with that. That's a problem.
Yeah. Well, look, we had him on over a week ago. And
yeah, but the issue people were bitching about him was that he went on to Republican or GOP things.
No,
that doesn't bother me. I don't care who he talks to about that.
But Cenk still showed his hand when he was with us. And he is still trying to convince people that the fight really needs to be within the Democratic Party. And it's like, I'm trying to tell him, like, dude, how fucking late to the game do you have to be? Like, stop pretending. Like, in his case, it's completely different because his entire livelihood is wrapped up in that business that he started. And he got way too big for his britches. And the one person who truly fucked him over was Dave Rubin, who was the biggest grifter I've ever seen. I mean, it takes a lot to compete with Ben Shapiro, let me tell you, and David Pakman. And aren't you close to where Pakman lives, if I'm not mistaken? Sabby, I really
he really has a beef with Pakman.
I really want to donkey punch that motherfucker. Like,
I have his phone number.
And that little slime bucket. We knew it's like when you show your hand, you show your hand. When Pakman back in 2017 was advocating for regime change in Venezuela, it's like, that's it. It's over. Don't ever listen to people like this again, because they're showing you who they really are.
You have a lot of issues with him. It is not just Venezuela.
Well, it's the whole masculine male type shit, that
You want to
thing,
punch him in his vagina.
Well, because Harry Sisson is way too young. I would like to smack him upside his head. Another person who comes from immense privilege, but they all do. It's like these outsized influencers that are always trying to sheep herd people back into the Democratic Party. These are not people from struggle. I lived in the Bronx for 2 fucking years when I lived literally on the floor with a mattress. Okay. If you haven't actually struggled, I don't want to hear your fucking opinion about what is needed for working people because you don't care. When push comes to shove, you will fuck over the people who need the most help. That's what ends up happening. That's why you can't trust Alex.
I think that unfortunately, some of the people who may have had good intentions in the beginning about fighting back against the establishment and fighting for working class people, along the way, the Democratic Party made their way into their vicinity and they started making money. TYT, for example, is a business. And I keep telling my viewers that it's a business. It's not like what I do. Like I'm just sitting here in a room in my house. I don't have a studio. I don't have
That's what we say.
I don't have like a mic'd up room. I don't have, I have like Corey and Eric who are tremendously helpful and have helped me a lot, along the way. But I don't have like an entire staff that I have to pay and all. I don't have all those things. TYT is also, I think they have a Roku channel. I think David Pakman also does too. And then there's also a TYT channel on YouTube TV or whatever. But they're kind of, all over the place on levels where the rest of us are not. But they decided to make it a business. I think David Pakman also at some point decided to make it a business. I know the Democratic Party, they got a hold of him. Anytime you can just walk into the White House like that and you can sit down and have a conversation with Kamala Harris, you're on their team. You're not trying to take people outside of that system. And you're also not trying to heavily criticize that particular party. So that's why you're there. That's why Brian Tyler Cohen's there. That's why. So they have those influencers on the right. They have influencers that are also, I wouldn't say left, but more the liberal persuasion. And I think that along the way, unfortunately, some people decided to just take the money and to go with what was going to be profitable. I don't know what is going to really happen with TYT. I think part of it is like maybe Cenk thought that he could tap in to some of that MAGA base a little bit, but I think it cost them subscribers. And then I think another part of it is I think they got tired of not getting a win on the national level, which is why I go back to the Kshama Sawant thing and not just her. They really should have been emphasizing and elevating these progressive wins on the local level. But again, I guess they felt like the clicks and the views aren't there. That's another part of it too. I think that movements really do have to be led by people on the ground. I do get nervous sometimes when people make the call to podcasters to go lead this movement because that was Justice Democrats. And then we saw where that went. So when they are running a business, I think they're always going to put the needs of the business first. And then you can look at the connection right now TYT has with Poly Market. And we pointed this out when they took the money from Jeffrey Katzenberg, et cetera. I mean, it was really obvious. Exactly. I mean, nobody's giving me $20 million. Nobody's, and some of us have said no. There are a number of us that have been contacted that people don't know that have been contacted to go in a direction that's a little bit more mainstream, and we turned it down. So I think people need to start looking around and asking if people started to shift their message, if they're just now saying just vote blue no matter who, and they weren't saying that 2 years ago. I think people need to start asking like what's going on here behind the scenes.
That's why you are one of the best out there right now. You have crossed a major threshold. And because of that, I know that people have probably approached you. Hey, we'll pay you this amount. And, you do this and you do that. And you're thinking, that's not why I do this. And I wish more people would take that into consideration. I know Keaton and Russell do. But there's not really a lot that kind of get past that level where money starts to get serious and you have to start thinking about the decisions you have to make economically. But if the mission is the primary driver, then that's where the difference will be made. Because if you can't be bought, that's just as scary as locking arms with people that voted for Donald Trump and will say, I believe in a living wage. I believe in universal health care. I believe in clean water. And I have noticed, as I'm sure you have, that there really is a substantial libertarian bend in the MAGA movement that does not support Israel. They do not want anything to do with it. They can see it for exactly what it is. And we've had plenty of people that support Trump on our podcast that are fully against what Israel is doing. And they're willing to speak out about it, even if it is to the detriment of the Trump, coalition, so to speak. But that'll come and go. The movement is what will stay. And for those who say that we shouldn't be breaking bread, we know who the people are that are not on the mission, but most people are. Most people in any political faction that is not just sucking up to power understands just how precarious our political and economic situation in this country is right now. It's very dangerous. And we do need to figure out ways where we can coalesce. And that's why I think this conversation is immensely important. Jen, any thoughts?
Yeah, we try. I'm happy to talk to anybody always. Like, I'll talk to people. I just, it's just a matter of we have to be, and I think you touched on it earlier, Sabby, about like having heroes chosen for you and the people that kind of get crammed down our throat. And I think one of the other things that we do tend to do with that is like one issue people. So somebody who was like so big, like in David Hogue's case, it was the gun issue, but it could be anything. And we had Tim down here. It was about one environmental issue, and they are only on their one thing. That's not necessarily with the bigger mission. And until people can really see the bigger mission, that's where people stay tied up in these little factions, and everybody's in their own little thing. And we need to be able to see sort of like the forest through the trees. And it really is a class war. And I think that whenever people are willing to address that, those are people I can work with. When you want to deal with everybody deserves to live and have a living wage and live with dignity, and we all deserve these things just by the nature of our existence here, those are people I can work with. And it doesn't really matter why they think that. You know what I mean? And it doesn't matter to me what their pronouns are. And I feel like that is something that we need to just sort of recognize as the class war.